The most infamous deal in Spider-Man history involves the literal devil, and the movie fired him. No Way Home lifts its ending from One More Day, the comic where Peter sells his marriage to Mephisto, then hands the same dirty work to Doctor Strange and a spell of forgetting. The wreckage looks identical on both sides, Peter stripped of everyone he loves to buy back his secret, but who makes the choice, who pays the price, and who has to live remembering it could not be more different. What follows is the honest ledger. What the film kept, what it quietly rewrote, and which version of losing everything actually cost Peter more. No Way Home made nearly $2 billion by quietly remaking the most hated Spider-Man comic ever printed. The memory wipe that ends the film is One More Day, the 2007 Deal with the Devil story that readers have spent years treating like a crime scene. Marvel kept the erasure and the loneliness, then swapped out almost every part that made people furious. 8 specific rewrites decide whether this movie redeemed that story or just gave it a better lawyer. And the difference comes down to who gets to remember. Before the prosecution starts, credit where it is due, because 2 load-bearing beams of One More Day made it to the screen nearly intact. The first is the pilgrimage. A desperate Peter walking into the Sanctum Sanctorum to beg Doctor Strange for a magical fix. That scene is lifted straight from the comic, with only the request changed, from healing a gunshot wound to erasing a leaked identity. The second survivor is the ending itself, a massive magical reset that restores Peter's secret identity by rewriting his closest relationships. The comic excises a marriage, the film deletes Peter entirely, but the machinery is identical, one incantation trading love for anonymity. The film kept the skeleton of its source, which is exactly what makes every swap it made worth prosecuting. Both stories break Peter with the same dying woman, but the comic wounds her by accident and the film executes her as a punishment. In One More Day, Peter is a married adult, and the bullet that leaves Aunt May dying was a sniper's round meant for him. She lingers under a fatal prognosis while her grown nephew hunts for any miracle that will undo one bullet. The film hands the job to the Green Goblin, who guts a teenager's world with a glider and a pumpkin bomb in a wrecked lobby. May dies in Peter's arms within minutes, still insisting he did the right thing, and hands him the line about power and responsibility as she goes. The comic stretches the dread across the whole arc, the film buys one unbearable scene, and the film's version is the one that leaves a mark. Both Peters by a miracle, so watch what each one actually puts on the counter. Comic Peter sells his marriage to Mephisto, a literal demon who wants the union dissolved for his own satisfaction, in exchange for May's heartbeat. It is a transaction with a predator, and the story treats the signing like a funeral. Film Peter never meets a devil, he asks a colleague for a spell to fix an exposed identity. When that spell collapses, the final price is one Peter names himself, asking Strange to make the entire world forget Peter Parker ever existed. The comic's cost is extracted, the film's cost is volunteered, and that single change converts the same ending from a fleecing into a sacrifice. Here is the cruelest rewrite. The comic makes sure nobody inside the story feels the loss, and the film makes one person carry all of it. One More Day ends with a cosmic retcon. The marriage simply never happened, and Peter wakes up single with no grief because there is nothing to grieve. The only mourner is the reader, standing outside the panels, holding a memory no character shares. The film runs the erasure inside the story and points it one way, so everyone forgets Peter while Peter forgets nothing. That is why the movie can end with him ordering coffee from the girl he loves, while she serves him like a polite stranger. The comic outsources the pain to its audience, the film makes its hero the audience, and only one of those choices is brave. The comic's most defensible scene is the one the film refuses to shoot, Mary Jane looking the devil in the eye and negotiating. In the arc, she officially accepts Mephisto's deal herself and adds her own stipulations, a wife co-signing the loss of her marriage. Mephisto even shows the couple the little girl their bargain erases, their future daughter, and MJ chooses the trade anyway. Film MJ gets a farewell instead of a vote, extracting a promise that Peter will find her and make her remember. Then he stands in her donut shop with the speech in his pocket, sees the scar on her forehead, and decides for both of them, again. The film trades her agency for his tragedy, and it never admits that the promise he breaks was the only say she had. Replacing Mephisto with Doctor Strange is not a casting change. it deletes the story's entire moral genre. The comic is a temptation play, and the arc stages the demon revealing his true form to pitch the bargain. Mephisto profits from the suffering, which makes the deal a sin, and the ending a loss to a predator. The film has no Tempter at all, just an ally casting a dangerous spell as a favor. Magic is machinery with side effects. Nobody wins when the film's spell resolves. Nobody collects, and so the blame has nowhere to land except on Peter himself. The movie gains accountability and loses horror, because a bad decision can be learned from, but a devil holding your marriage is just gone. Both resets leave Peter single, secret, and starting over, but one plays like a sitcom pilot and the other like a eulogy. Brand New Day hands comic Peter a fresh supporting cast, a new job, and a bounce in his step, amnesia as a soft reboot. The book wants you excited about the new status quo, which is precisely why so many readers never forgave it. The film ends its reset in a rented room with one mattress, a GED study guide, and a sewing machine. Peter stitches his own red and blue suit by hand, because the world that owed him favors no longer knows his name. The comic calls its reset a new day, the film makes you count every missing piece, and the next movie inherits that emptiness. Motive is where the film quietly outwrites its source, so track why each Peter reaches for magic. Comic Peter is a victim. The sniper's bullet came from outside, aimed at him, and everything he does afterward is a rescue attempt for a dying May. Film Peter is the perpetrator, because he corrupted the first spell himself, interrupting the incantation over and over to carve out exceptions. The villains he freed, the cures he insisted on, the multiverse he cracked open, every link in the chain that kills May starts in his hands. So when he asks to be forgotten, he is not paying a ransom, he is settling his own invoice. The comic asks what a good man will pay to save someone, the film asks what a guilty one owes, and the second question has teeth. The movie's emotional engine has no page to point at, because One More Day contains no multiverse and no second Peter to lean on. Maguire and Garfield are pure invention here, and they function as the grief counseling the comic never let its hero have. On the rooftop, they hand Peter their own dead, Uncle Ben and Gwen Stacy, as proof that rage is a road they have both already walked. Garfield, catching MJ mid-fall, replays the worst night of his life with a different ending, and the movie knows exactly what it is doing. Maguire silently catching the glider swing is the whole thesis in one shot, an older Peter refusing to let a younger one become a killer. Comic Peter grieves alone, straight into a devil's arms. Film Peter grieves in company, and that addition is what makes his ending feel earned instead of bought. Two structural moves change this story more than any single scene swap, and both are about when the hammer falls. The comic opens with May already dying from a gunshot wound, so the entire book runs on a countdown. The film holds that blow until the end of the second act, when the goblin wounds her, converting a rescue mission into a punishment for choices already made. Move the dying woman from the beginning to the end and desperation becomes consequence, which is the whole difference between the two Peters. The second move is compression. Strange's consultation, the bargain, and the reset span separate comic chapters, and the film welds them into one climactic ask. The comic lets Peter shop around and marinate in temptation for a full issue. The film gives him seconds on a collapsing statue. Slow deliberation reads as damnation, and a snap decision reads as heroism, so the structure itself was always going to acquit the movie version. No Way Home is Marvel performing One More Day's surgery a second time, 14 years later, with the fan complaints taped to the wall. The film wins on causality and cost. It's Peter breaks the world himself, pays for it himself, and chooses a price the comics Peter had extracted from him. The comic still wins on horror, because a devil collecting a marriage while a future daughter dissolves in the fine print is a wound the film never risks. What the adaptation lost is a villain to blame. What it gained is a hero worth the blame, and audiences cheered the ending readers revolted against. Same spell, same loneliness, opposite verdicts, and the only variable that changed is who signed the check. Here is the honest scorecard. The film fixed the comic's biggest sin and committed a quieter one of its own. No Way Home makes the loss mean something, because May dies as a direct bill for Peter's mercy, and the erasure is him paying it, which is exactly the cause and effect One More Day never earned with its devil in a suit. But the comic, for all its Faustian absurdity, let Mary Jane negotiate her own sacrifice and whisper her own terms, while the film has Peter stand in a coffee shop and make that choice for her, then walk out, calling it kindness. What survived the translation is the only thing that had to. Peter Parker buying everyone else's second chance with his own history and being the only one who remembers the receipt. So put the two goodbyes side by side. MJ's whispered condition to Mephisto and that bandaged forehead behind the counter, and ask yourself which version actually lets her say goodbye, and which one just says it for her. Hit subscribe to join us every week as we dissect the biggest differences between your favorite books and their movie adaptations. Drop a comment below. Which change from Spider-Man? One More Day hurt the most, and which one actually improved the story?